Morena whānau. Welcome to the webinar this morning. We're going to start with a karakia. So, kia karakia tātou. Tukua te wairua ki rere ki ngā taumata. Hai arahi ai a tātou mahi, me te tātou whai I te mātauranga, kia mau, kia ita, kia kōrero ai e ngaro, kia pupuri, kia whakamaua, kia tēnā, hui e, tai ki e. Welcome, everyone. I'm about to pass you over to our Executive Director to let you know the plan for the morning. Kia ora.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko Jane Treadwell Hoi, tōku ingoa. My name is Jane Treadwell Hoi. I'm the Executive Director of the Education Partnership and Innovation Trust, and it's my great pleasure to welcome you to the launch of this, our Empowering Our Youth Part 2 Research Careers Leadership in Secondary Schools in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Many of you will be aware that we did a piece of research which Lynette led and launched last August, which was a short snapshot of the success stories of what's happening in South Auckland High School that were doing exceptionally good practices around careers leadership and the things they were doing to support their students and their students' whānau and the teachers. As a result of that piece of research, we decided that we needed more of a nationwide view, and that is what this research that we launched this morning, and Lynette is about to walk us through, will actually detail and examine. We're looking forward to questions. The research report will launch on our website shortly, so please do go check it out, download it and read it. And I wish you all a great day and an opportunity to share and to learn, because this is incredibly important kaupapa, and we believe in the nature of successful career transitions for our rangatahi is becoming more and more important. And it's not just traditional university or trades. There are now so many more options, and leadership is critical to that. So Lynette, I'll pass it back to you. Thank you.
Kia ora whānau. I ngā mana, I ngā reo, I ngā hauewha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa, ki te tangata kia huihui nei ngā mihi, e whānau, ngā hapu, e te iwi, nui tonu te mihi kia koutou. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko poke hapopo te maunga, ko waiamoko te awa, ko paikia tōku tūpuna, ko ngāti kanohi tōku iwi. No whangara mai tawhiti ahau, engari e noho au ki Onehonga. Ko Reid Tepurai tōku whānau, ko Lynette Reid tōku ingoa. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā rā tātou katoa. Kia ora, everybody out there. Thank you so much for joining me and my colleague Nish today. I hope you've all had a good start to the week. I'm just going to run through with you the process or the procedure for today, if you like. So I have a PowerPoint that I'm going to run through, and the PowerPoint will be available to you as well. I'm asking if you do have questions as I'm speaking, if you could put them in the chat, and Nish, my colleague, will help sort through them, and I will look at those. We'll talk about those towards the end of the presentation. So hopefully that's going to work for everybody. I do have a quick question I'd like to ask people, if you wouldn't mind putting something in the chat in relation to this. I wonder if you could share who you are learning the most from at this present time. And when I say learning, I mean that in its broadest sense, informal, formal, non-formal learning, but who or what, it might not be a person, who are you learning from? If you can just put in the chat who these people are or non-people. Thank you, Nish, for repeating the question. So who or what are you learning the most from at this present time? If people could just put their thoughts in there, that would be great. Thank you. 6-year-old daughter. Thank you. Thank you. Colleagues, awesome. Great, great. Thank you. Keep going, whānau. Thank you. Thank you. I'll share who I'm learning from the most at the moment. I'm learning the most from my younger sister. She's the pōtiki in our whānau, and I'm learning the most from her because she is such a wonderful, wonderful presenter, facilitator, so natural, speaks a lot about her lived experiences as well. So it's wonderful. All right, I think we've got a few there. Thank you all for participating, colleagues, community conversations. Thank you, NMIT, love that. Thank you, colleagues are a hit. Reading and research, awesome, awesome. One more question. What is it about the person or the thing? What is the teaching practice that you're, that's resonating for you in that learning space? I think I have already said that what I'm vibing from, I guess, in relation to my sister, is that she speaks about a lot of lived experiences, things that she did when she was younger, things that she's been through as an adult, a lot of things that I didn't know about her too. So those lived experiences are just working for me at the moment in relation to learning. But what else? What else can you say? What is it that your colleagues or that the research, that the writing is doing, or enacting, or, pivoting, pinpointing, that is working for you at the moment? Thank you. I can see some things coming. Thank you. Thank you. Open conversations focused on growth. Thank you. Some awesome responses, whānau. Thank you very much for that. Always like to start with just a few little questions to get us going. Right, I am going to start with the presentation now, and I hope that everything is ready for me to go. What I'm going to be presenting on is the Careers Leadership in Aotearoa Schools, a nationwide view, and it's a piece of research. That's what I'm going to be speaking on today. Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen, and someone will tell me if you can't, Nish. Just a little bit of context to the survey. It's part 2 of Empowering Our Youth, which was research that was commissioned by EPIT. So there's and I mean, it's the first time I've come across this section. I shouldn't really be saying that as an academic, but it's lovely to have done a piece of work and then to see something being built from it, and hopefully others will come beyond that. So it's part 2, and it's specifically looking at careers leadership. The other context to the survey is the careers context. From my point of view, we've got some momentum. Some people might say it slowed down a little with, a change in government and so on, and all sorts of other rhetoric that's going on at the moment. But to me, it feels like there's a bit of momentum in the careers space, in our careers field. And I want to say that a significant push ahead was the National Career System Strategy and Action Plan that was developed with an all-of-government approach by TEC. And I mean, that document single-handedly blew our careers workforce open to so many people, so many groups, so many community organisations. And I think that, there's just some momentum around that. So I think the careers context, it felt like it was the right time to be doing part 2 of the research. And I think always we need research-led evidence from Aotearoa. That's a real platform for me. I think there's a lot that we're doing here in Aotearoa that we don't acknowledge, that we can do more on and more with. So that's a bit of a context to the survey. I'd have to say too, sharing with you all, that it's been a long time since I've been engaged in quantitative research. And I think the last time was when I did my master's, and I'm not even going to put a date on that, but it was a long time ago. So I was a little bit anxious about engaging in the survey, or in preparing, designing a research survey. So that's just a little bit of context, a little bit of background. The other thing too, actually, before I forget, is that careers leadership, the influence, the impact of leadership, senior leadership in schools, has been a constant finding. And that's across research, worldwide, not just here in Aotearoa. So there's something there that we need to find out more about. The research design. When we were discussing how we would do this research, and that it was looking like it was going to be a survey, understandably to get a much broader view of our participants. I went back to my whānau research group, or my whānau that have been with me for the first piece of research, and went back to them again for this piece of research to just see, is this a go? Are we going to get something here? Is it worthwhile? All those kind of questions. And they were fantastic in their responses and their support. And I'd have to say a big ups to them, because this group, and you know who you are, because they had the brilliant suggestion of using scenarios, which I'll talk a little bit about further into the kōrero. So collaboration with my whānau group was paramount for me. That had to be at the heart of the research design. And then, of course, there was the literature. And we're fortunate in our field. There's always a lot of literature around the careers space. And for this research, it was literature by our UK colleagues. And of course, one of them is Tristram Hooley, who was here, I think, last year as a guest with TSC and attended the CDANS conference. He has done a lot of work. He and Andrews, his colleague Andrews, have done a lot of work around careers leadership. The other one, of course, all-time favourite person of mine is Ron Sultanas. He has done a lot of work as well. So there was a lot of literature to draw on. I was really interested in our literature in Aotearoa in this space, and the work of Karen Vaughan was quite significant. And my colleague Dr. Dale Furbish and I did a small piece of research that also fitted into this space as well. So the literature was there. There was a lot of great ideas, a lot of findings that I was able to draw on and use to contribute to the research design. Lastly, the voice of participants. I was worried, how would I capture that? How would I ascertain their perceptions, their experiences, their thoughts? How would I, determine or get a sense of their context if I'm not seeing them face to face, if I'm not going into schools and so on? Because that is really the only kind of research that I had done. So, that was my strongest. So their voice was, it was on my mind a lot. How can we capture it? And that's where the idea of using scenarios came into play. So those are some features in relation to the research design. And I also drew on the participatory action research paradigm for this research. I really am a qualitative researcher, always have been. And I find voice, stories, raw and honest, truths and all that sort of thing, the surroundings, as being just a special way of engaging with participants and of drawing and developing just some awesome findings. So I wondered, how could I bring this paradigm into this research so that we could construct knowledge and build on what people were already doing in schools, but also contribute to new thinking, also sort of provide a stimulus or pose a question, pose a different way of looking at things. So it was all about what is already known, what is working for participants, but what could be improved as well. So those were kind of paramount in my mind. And I want to continue amplifying the voices of those in secondary schools and their explanations and insights into career education practice and the context they practice in. We're not going to find out about it any other way. It needs to be the voice of people who are doing it, so to speak. So the participatory action research frame. I used that in part 1 of the research as well, which was a qualitative piece of work, but I thought it could work quite well here as well. So that was, that I was starting to build building I guess a platform for this research and starting to feel like, I think this is a go. I think I can do this. Okay, keeping on moving here. So presentation of scenarios. In essence, what they are there are 3 in this piece of research, or there were 3 in the survey. And they were scenarios of different career education and career leadership structures in schools. So just a scenario, an example of what it could look like. And I felt like if participants could engage with that, then we might just get some nuances, which was what I was looking for too. And you can usually draw that from that qualitative, from the face-to-face. So I was sure I could draw nuances from that. So the scenarios were going to support me to co-construct some kind of knowledge base and to expand our experiences and perceptions of career education and guidance in schools. All right, so we decided that we would use an online anonymized survey. There were 23 questions in total. 11 of these were multi-choice and 12 were open-ended. And there were 3 scenarios included in amongst those questions. So, and SurveyMonkey was used to take, to draw the data together. I want to say too that there are always concerns around the use of a survey, particularly in the structure and the shape of the questions. How many is too many? Are we giving enough background to support the question? So it's all that kind of thing that's playing on your mind as well when you're doing some research design. But yeah. So that was how we had it. 23 might sound like a lot, but some of those questions were demographic, were quantitative, and you'll see from my findings in a minute. So they were short, quick, and easy to answer. In fact, after the survey had finished, only very recently, the survey had closed off, and I was at a school. No, I wasn't. I was at an event, at an event, and I met with a careers advisor there, and he said, "Oh my gosh, the survey, I finished it. It was great." And he made a really interesting point, and he said, "Yep, I was ticking away. This, I know this. Yep." And then he said, "Oh, hang on." And he said, then I felt like I had to start thinking a bit more. So I took that as a compliment. I thought, well, that's good. That's what we want to do. We want to stimulate your thinking so that we can get some really good responses to whatever was presented. So yeah, bit of, what do you call that? Informal feedback about the survey design. Okay, I'm going to keep going. Right, so the participants we had 2 participant groups. We hoped that all careers, transition, pathways and gateway staff, they were one of our biggest groups. And we had hoped too that we would get senior leaders from schools, so principals, deputy principals, and so on. We had a total of 114 responses, and you will see that last point there that the majority of the participants were careers staff. So 96% of our total were careers staff from in schools. I was a little disappointed in the take up by senior leaders. And on the next couple of slides, you'll see that we contacted and built a relationship with a whole range of groups. I'll show you that now. To hopefully promote, for want of a better word, the survey. But like all surveys, others, organisations can promote it, put it in their newsletter, but it's up to other people, it's up to participants to see an interest in it and then click on that link. So I wished we'd got more senior leaders, but nevertheless, we got a great deal of feedback, thoughts, ideas from our colleagues in careers, from our colleagues who are, some of them, senior leaders, and many who are also career practitioners in schools. So you can see that in disseminating the survey link, we drew on quite a wide variety of organisations, and thank you to them all, because it was a really interesting kōrero that I had with many of them about just what was going on in that careers leadership space and in senior leadership in relation to careers. So yeah, a good range of people there to kōrero with. All right. I'm starting to talk now a little bit more about the findings. And these are some of the demographic questions that I mentioned earlier that that participants were easily able to answer. And so the findings were that most of our participants were from state schools. So that's 67% of them. And 46% of respondents were in schools that were located in metropolitan areas. So that's the larger centres. And followed, not too far behind by 35% located in metropolitan urban centres. State integrated was the next biggest category or choice of schools for participants. And we did get some small numbers, but still numbers, from private schools, area schools, and kura. So thank you. If you're one of the participants, thank you. Okay, so we're going now to looking at most participants, as I say, a little summary, were from co-educational state schools located in metropolitan regions with large student enrolment. So that's over 1,000 students enrolled. So, a good range, I felt. I felt it was good. I felt like we had a nice range across our demographics. All right, I'm looking now at a question that talked about how many careers staff were employed in schools. And you'll see there that most were in that 2 careers staff employed, 1 person employed, so not far between the 2. Then we had 3, and then we had 4 staff. So I thought that 4 staff it's a small number, but growing, I felt, and 3 staff, 15%. So I thought that was interesting as well. Some of the other areas now, I was starting to move into looking at leadership roles held by career staff. I thought that was interesting for us to get more information about, because this research is about careers leadership. Yes, it's about the influence of senior leaders in the schools, their influence and their impact, but it's also about what's happening in that space of careers leadership, leading and leadership in careers in schools. Hence this particular question. And you'll see there that in what was described as middle leadership roles, we had 1 person from the careers team who were in those positions. So 61%, quite a few participants, their schools had 1 person from their careers team in a middle leadership role. The shared leadership, you'll see that was 50%, and up to 3 staff from their team were involved in that space. And then finally, the senior leadership roles, or senior leadership, only 1 person, again, from the careers team, but only 16%. So it looks like, as far as the careers teams go in schools, some have middle leadership roles, many have some kind of shared leadership role. And when that was, explained a bit further, the shared leadership role meant not just careers roles, but teaching roles on different working groups, different sectors in the school. But there is careers leadership is there in some way, shape, or form. That's for sure. Okay, I am going to keep going. Please, if you have questions as I'm going, please put the questions in the chat, and Nish or someone will, will look at them towards the end of the session. All right, going to keep moving, Whānau, but we're going really good for time. Right, whoops. Okay, now this was a multi-choice question, and it was asking what career education looks like in your school, and we had these responses. So we had whole of school, integrated, embedded, unsure. So those were the choices that people had. Please keep in mind too that these were presented without any additional information on each. And people just selected what they felt resonated with them off the cuff, and having already answered a few other questions. So you'll see that most people, it was very, very, very little between them. But I'm sure you're focusing or looking at the unsure, which was 41%. Now, when I looked at the entire survey or the results, I believe that schools were using other descriptions for their models. These were just a stock standard, they're the most commonly used terms across schools. But interestingly, I noticed other schools calling things differently in the more open-ended questions. So I'm wondering if they thought, well, that's not really what we're doing, or we're doing a bit of this and a bit of that. So it didn't quite meet the mark about whether it was one of the three. That's my perception on this. It could be too that this question appeared quite early in the survey. So I'm wondering too if I needed to take a little bit longer to get to that question. Yeah. I mean, you don't know those things in surveys. That's another part of doing quantitative May. Okay, but a whole school, not a lot of difference, as I say, whole of school, integrated and embedded, not much difference between the three. All right. Quickly after that question came this multi-choice question. How satisfied are you with your chosen option? And you'll see that many were very satisfied. Well, some were very satisfied. More were satisfied, and there was quite a high number of people who are dissatisfied. When you combine the very satisfied and satisfied, then that gives a bigger group in that satisfied space. But interesting, satisfaction versus dissatisfaction. And again, when I read the open-ended responses, there was a lot of detail around that dissatisfaction and around the satisfaction, but quite evenly balanced. Yeah. I think that's all I need to say about that one. I'm going to keep moving through the results. And then a great open-ended question, what would you change? What would you change in relation to the career models? And these came in three different themes. The first was around school leadership strategies. The second was around strategies for changing perceptions of career roles and career education across the school. And the third was career models. Now, I've heard these sorts of comments before. So school leadership strategies, that came out of part one, the part one survey research that we did. Changing perceptions, that was a big one and continued throughout this particular piece of research. And it came up again in some research that Dr. Dale Furbish and I did in 2013. So you get where I'm going here. The themes are still there. These, our feelings in 2013 might not have changed too much in 2024, but strategies for changing perceptions of career roles and models. So leadership. What our colleagues were saying is that careers leadership may be viewed as an add-on to an already busy role. So school leadership, if you're giving the role to a senior leadership person, and they're taking on careers leadership, is it an add-on? You know, people are already busy in those roles, so should it be a role in itself? Other things that were brought up around the school leadership strategy was status that matches other curricula. So for school leadership strategies to address the status, the place, the purpose, the level, the assumptions, the expectations around careers, education and guidance in schools. So something about, you know, when there's a mention of status, then you assume that the status of career education and guidance doesn't match some of the other curricular areas. And also within this space, senior leadership supporting a cohesive careers strategy plan. That was said a lot. That was said a lot. Senior leaders supporting a cohesive careers strategy plan. So those are some examples of comments, responses that participants were sharing under the school leadership strategy. So there's some quite specifics there. I think though that they're specifics that we've known for a while. Still great to have them drawn out in a lot of commentary. The changing perceptions. That's always an interesting one, and I know it's a burning issue for many of us in the field, and it's something too that isn't only experienced in schools. So changing perceptions. There's a need for cooperation from staff, from school staff. That was all thread through as well. We need the cooperation, we need the buy-in, you can imagine the rhetoric, the discourse. We need other people in the school to support us. Other interesting things that were also raised were things like career staff not being considered or asked about the provision of career education in the classroom. So not being consulted, not being brought in, not being invited into the classroom where career education is taking place. So there was just questions around that. Why would that be happening? What more can we do about it? So changing perceptions. And the last thing was about career education models. And this was linked to the recognition of the vital and essential role career education plays in achieving goals across education. Many felt that there just didn't seem to be that connection. There just didn't seem to be that connection there. So it was, interesting and very full. The responses from many of you were very, very full. Thank you, everyone, for that. Okay. Right. Have I moved? No, I haven't. Now, and so within that space, this, I think, is the quote of the day. This is what one participant has shared with us, or shared with me, in the survey. It's a beautiful statement, and it captures everything that that is going on, that there's room for improvement, that are challenges. It captures opportunities as well. I'm going to read it out, but I know you can do that yourselves. So more support, a school-wide approach, more access to students, teachers having exposure to what careers is about, treating careers advisors as professionals and not just support staff, SLT on board and given time to promote careers to wider family, more money on PD to upskill, to be seen, careers advisors to be seen as the expert, and given the autonomy to guide students, not to be told to use staff funding, goes against career advisor professional practice and impacts on relationships with students. Some staff think we only find students jobs. Now, there were many examples of the perception that that teaching colleagues have of careers people. One was that all you do is email. You just send out a lot of emails, and the other one was, I think it's further in the deck. The other one was that you, my gosh, I've just lost it. The third one was that you just provide brochures. You hand out brochures. I can't believe those are still thought of today, but there you have it. And some staff think that we have no understanding of our practice. Some are not interested. Social studies needs to incorporate the world of work more. So there you go, a great verbatim from a participant who's filled out the survey, and I think it's a nice summary of pretty much what was said in that space about what was going on, and it supports the three areas that I presented earlier. Okay. So I want to move now to looking at the scenarios. And these scenarios were in relation to career education and leadership. And so they have been built from previous literature, previous research. So they're not mine. I didn't make them up. They're from Hooley and Andrews and a lot of their work. I might have changed a few things around in it, but these are scenarios that have been presented in other research and and have been tried and tested. So there are 3 scenarios. Scenario 1 is the senior careers leadership, and I'll give you a little bit more detail about that next. Scenario 2 is the middle careers leader reporting to senior leadership team, and scenario 3 is shared leadership. Now, if any of you have access to the link to the report, there are, you'll see the scenarios in there. I have got PowerPoints that show what they're about or show them in detail, but there's a lot to read. So be prepared to, have to look at something that shows a lot of words. All right, so this is scenario 1, senior careers leader. So it's an example of careers leadership and senior leadership roles and how they might look, how they could look. I've tried to highlight some key points. So careers leader, they're called a careers leader. Career strategy, which aligns with the school strategy. The senior leadership team has the ultimate accountability for the school's career strategy and program. The SLT has an identified careers person in the team who work closely with the careers leader. The careers leader is on the SLT or has a clear reporting line to the SLT. So there's a lot of stuff there, people. As I say, I'm just trying to give you a quick overview of what the senior careers leader scenario looks like, and then tell you a little bit more then about what the responses were from that. But if you have got the link, hopefully Nish might have put the link into the chat, or could put the link into the report in the chat, then you can take some time and review that. And of course, that report is more detailed than what I'm giving here. I'm just picking out points that might create a conversation, and that we can spend a little bit of time in this context discussing or sharing. Okay, so that is scenario 1. Now, here are some of our participants' insights into that particular scenario. And they were mainly posed around questions. Do we have suitably qualified and experienced staff to take on this role? Will they want it? Great questions. What if nominated careers leader does not have relevant background and knowledge? Another great question. Overwhelming agreement that there is an absolute need for this role to grow and lead career education. So where does that take us to? Of course, it takes us to more questions like good research ought to, and hopefully then in kōrero we can look towards what can we do about this. I don't want to say solutions per se, but how can we work towards understanding this type of scenario and what the nuances are of that scenario. So the considerations are then, what level of careers expertise would be needed and most effective at senior leadership level. So if there was a careers leader on the senior leadership team, what might their careers expertise be? What would it need to be? And what would be most effective? What types of expertise, skills would be most effective at that level? Another consideration is, once we've got a sense of this expertise, skills, knowledge, aptitudes, and so on, how could that expertise be developed and extended for the careers staff? So how could this expertise be developed and extended? What's in place in schools for careers staff to advance their own career? What is there so that they can move into senior leadership roles? What can support them? And the last one is, how might the role be appealing to career staff? How could a senior leadership role, very similar or with some tweaks to the scenario presented, how might that role be appealing? What would be the appeal to career staff? So those were just some further considerations, I think. And as I say, further points for discussion in kōrero, perhaps even too for some research too around some of those suggestions. So that was the senior leadership role scenario 1, senior leadership, where the careers person was on the senior leadership team. Those were the kind of insights that participants shared, and then I've established those kind of considerations of where that can go to. Okay, I'm about to show 2 more scenarios. So it is scenario 2 following next, and that is the middle careers reporting to senior leadership team. And I think I'm saying that, oh, okay. All right, so we're not getting the link just yet. All right, so bear with me, people, then. I'm sorry, Whānau, you're going to have to look at this, but I'm hoping you can get the general trend of it. So this is the middle careers leader reporting to senior leadership team. The title here is career coordinator, is part of the middle leaders meetings and attends decision-making forums, etc. The role is line managed and supported by a senior leader in the school who can contribute to the career strategy and provide support to the career coordinator. Career coordinator remains the sole person tasked with delivery of school career programs, and there is a provision of a careers administrator who would take on more routine tasks. So careers coordinator is part of the middle leadership space, has somebody on the senior leadership team with a responsibility for careers education and guidance across the school, and also should have provision of a careers administrator to deal with some of the more routine tasks. So that is an example of middle careers leaders reporting to SLT. I'm about to show you very similar slide. So participants, just their thoughts around that, and then the considerations, what questions might come out of that. Okay. Right. So participants' insight. It was around time. So this model provides more time to focus on careers practice across the school, time to develop strategies for supporting students. However, less time for big picture thinking, less time for that visionary, strategic type of thinking that's required. And there was a real positive about working closely with other middle leaders. There was the thought here that being in that middle leadership tier meant that you were sharing the role of, well, you were profiling the careers role, so that person might in turn take it back to, if they were an HOD, take it back to their teachers within their subject area. And so careers is starting to sort of grow and burgeon in different parts of the school. But it was mainly time around this that there just seemed like there'd be more time to focus on students, but less time for big picture thinking, but that working closely with other middle leaders was seen as a positive. So considerations in this for this particular model. Can a balance be found between operational and strategic thinking and planning? Can it? Ought it? Ought you be doing both? Are we talking about splitting the two, or should we be able to do some of those things together? This particular scenario raised a lot of questions, well, not a lot of questions, a lot of comments around pay scale, and in particular around pay scales for careers administrators, as in trying to find a person who has all the necessary skills, but not those skills, not the pay scale was not considered high enough or good enough for people who had those top skills. And then there were conversations too beginning to happen around that were stimulated by this scenario. And the questions, the issue, which has been an issue for some time now, about the pay scale or grade for career qualified staff who were not qualified teachers. So that was raised here quite a bit. So who leads that issue? Where is that issue? Does that need to be elevated more? Well, of course it does. Of course it does. And then the third question: how might this model impact the career advancement of career staff in schools? And then last of all, are we creating silos for careers leadership? I guess I was thinking, we've got scenarios that go across the leadership tiers in schools. Are we siloizing these rather than looking at blends? But I think the scenarios do indicate some kind of blends, but I don't know. I'm wondering if we're still doing a bit of siloing here. And my thought was, are there eclectic models being developed by schools? Are schools doing things differently that we need to find out about, that we don't know about? That maybe they don't recognize it as doing it differently. And which is often the feedback that I've heard when I've been engaged in research in schools. They're just doing what they're doing, making it work, using the context they're in, using their communities, using the whānau to support new ideas and new innovation. So I'm just wondering if this is a space that we could draw some more information from or more thoughts from. And I guess that took me to the point of, are there models that we can draw from Aotearoa that we might, and when I talk about models, I mean career leadership models, that we might not have fully investigated or we could investigate to see what would that look like? What would that model look like? And the first one that comes to my mind is because it's talked about a lot, is the wayfinding model. So, are there models that we could be drawing from Aotearoa? We don't necessarily have to reach into the other countries and their research. We can start to see what we're doing ourselves. And we know we're doing a lot, especially in that careers leadership, in the leadership space. So that is the scenario for middle careers leadership, reporting to SLT. So a few different things coming out there. Time was a positive, but there was consideration around, but when do we get time? We're in the doing, not that strategic thinking and planning is not a doing, but that needs, concentrated time. Where do we get that? So we're starting to talk about a balance now. And that was mentioned a lot, actually, that the careers roles in schools are doing roles, not necessarily strategic roles, but we do need the strategic arm, and I don't think there's anyone that would dispute this. So it was almost like a careers person would be split into two roles, that practice base, that operational base, but not be able to do the strategic, or vice versa, be in the strategic role, not be able to do the practice base. And I think that's very indicative of our field. We are at the chalk face, at the coal face, at at that front end of our mahi. All right, I'm going to keep going. And this time it's the final one. It's the final scenario. And this is the shared leadership. So tasks of leading and managing are divided between several members of staff working together as a team. The senior middle leader across the school takes on responsibility for the careers provision, and a staff member on the senior leadership team leads the careers strategy. So there's somebody across all levels or tiers of leadership engaged in careers. And that was described as shared leadership. Okay. Tasks of leading and managing divided between several members of staff working together as a team. I'm now going to do the same sort of thing. So I've got 2 quotes here from participants for this particular scenario, and there are a lot of quotes in the report too, which makes this much more lively and interesting. I just didn't want to repeat quotes that you can read on your own. So the first quote was, with a team, there would potentially be more buy-in across the school, especially if the people in the team had the ability to include the program in their subject specialty. So, doing what we do, looking at how can we get some wins and gains here. Well, we could work alongside people who could integrate, embed all those kind of terminologies, career education, into their subjects. The last one, or the second one, more perspectives that may not be from a place of best practice. Thought that was interesting. Time for coordinating a clear vision may not be there. So again, that strategic element not being present in this, but more bodies, more people to engage with about career education and guidance, to coordinate with, to share ideas with. But what if there was a difference in understanding in relation to what careers education and guidance is and was or is in the school? So some sort of pluses and minuses there. And so considerations. What are the attitudes and levels of understanding of careers work required of teaching staff? So what would we like? What do we expect? What do we assume teaching staff, understand of careers? Do we have a minimum? Do we have a basic? What do we think teaching staff, non-career staff, ought to know about careers education and guidance? What kind of attitudes? What kind of aptitudes? What kind of those soft skills? Have we nominated any? Have we raised these as clear skills that are needed in our field? So that was just an open-ended question. And again, I guess I started to think too more about the models and how might they impact careers staff and their advancement in schools. How is this going to impact where they might go to next or what they might want to do? And then the last one was, is this an emergent careers leadership model to develop and examine further? And that's going to my own bent of that collective approach to leading and leadership. And I guess what I was thinking here is that so often when we come out of our own field, out of our own knowledge space, and we go into a different space, a whole different way of looking at the world, it's a challenge. It is a challenge. But what I found myself doing when I've been in that situation, and I am in that situation in the role that I have at EPIT as an evaluator, is you go back to what you know and test it. You go back to what you know. You go back to your knitting, so to speak. And for me, I went back to my counselling, theories and models and ways of being, to almost reimagine the role that I have and what it might look like. And what that does is it reminds me just what I have got. and what more I need to find out. So I don't know. I just feel like sometimes we can be in our own field, in our own profession, just a little bit too much. It's nice to be out there and having our ideas and theories challenged, because it gets us thinking about what we're doing and why we're doing it. But it's also great to see, a fresh, an innovative, an emergent approach that you hadn't contemplated before. So that's kind of where I was going with that. It's never, we should always be doing that as often as we can. It's hard though. It's blinking hard, as I'm sure many of you know, to be in other areas. And to feel like you're starting again. You're starting from ground zero, so to speak, but you're actually not. You've already got a body of knowledge. See what's there in that body of knowledge that you can contribute to wherever else you're going in a new space. Yeah. So that is the end of the scenario. So some really, really interesting thoughts, which took me now towards some discussion points and towards some recommendations. So I'm about to go into those soon, and we'll be ready soon to start looking at questions. I don't know how this is coming on your screen. Hopefully it's not too small. So I've called these discussion points, and that's what I've titled them in the report. And there were three. The first one was making sense of career education and guidance. I love that. I love the notion of sense making, because I think we do it alongside our clients, our whānau, our communities, because what it means is that we have to figure out alongside our clients, what does make sense to you? Is there anything here that makes sense? And craft a way of sense making. So that's one. The other discussion point was models for career education, and the others was careers leadership. My favorite was making sense of career education and guidance. And you'll see in the report, I talk about the gradual transformation that we have been through. I've been in careers for a long time. I've seen a lot. I mean, a lot of stuff is coming back around again. But I'm saying gradual transformation, but at times that transformation was massive. We've experienced, much like many other sectors, a lot of change, and I mean just in our field. But then we've grown a lot too. And so that gradual transformation, those of us who are in the field, who have been here for some time or for a good while, we can speak to those. And so does it make sense that not everyone has understood that transformation? That's where I'm going to with this. So we and that was one thing that stood out at Country Mile in the survey, is that, and I've heard it around the traps, more and more people in our colleagues in our space and careers and broader, other related sectors are talking much more about career knowledge, career theories, career models. A lot of people are making the link with models that we have in Aotearoa, which is great to see. It's great to see. So what I'm saying is that we're growing, we're learning, we're discovering new things. When this isn't your space, isn't your field, isn't your profession, isn't where you started from, etc., you can sometimes be stuck with perceptions, negative perceptions. So that's the point I'm trying to make. I can almost feel myself going on soapbox here, so I'll carry on. The other point I wanted to make too here is that the struggle for the recognition of our knowledge, and that's part of that gradual transformation, because it wasn't that long ago that there weren't any qualifications in our field. in career education, career guidance, careers, anything, until the AUT qualification, and of course NMIT and many other options now. So that knowledge is new for many people as well. So the struggle for the recognition of that, I think it's going to be an ongoing thing. I think we've proven ourselves though, but it's still a struggle because you're in that much broader education space, which has models that go back back in time, sort of Maya Noor type of thing, whereas we're quite a new body of knowledge. So I think there's always going to be a struggle, but I think there's a tipping point there. The other point I sort of developed under this making sense of career education and guidance is the discussion around a qualified teacher and or qualified career staff. Which way do we go in that space of career education? Do we go qualified careers staff, or do we go with qualified teachers? Obviously, the spaces we're going with qualified teachers because there just aren't enough careers qualified staff. So what does that mean? So that sounds to me like we do need some sense making, some sort of dialogue needs to go on to make sense of what career education and guidance was and is going to be in the future. So not just now. Let's do a much broader dialogue around career education and guidance. And that's what I'm saying. So non-career staff, who's the sense maker? Who's going to be the sense maker? Is it going to be the careers expert or is it the senior leader? Okay. So that's that one. I spent a long time on that one because that's my favorite. All right, models for career education. And I, when I think about this and as part of the literature review, the models that are wrapped around career education are curriculum models. And so I'm wondering, have we engaged with curriculum theory? Has career education really engaged with curriculum theory? Because I wonder then if that would support critical thinking into what career knowledge ought to be known and to what end. I don't know. That's just, putting that out there. And I think models for career education seek other allies and perspectives on the public issue of career education. Other people look at other sectors, other organisations look at career education in a very different way, career guidance and education in a very different way. Let's hear how other people unpack it, how they link it, how they connect it. And I guess that's something that I came across more so when I was doing some work with the advisory panel for TEC, for the National Career System Strategy, and just to see the variety of perspectives on careers in other spaces. It's interesting. I think there's a lot we can learn from just seeking allies in other places, not just within our own space, other sectors. And don't forget, career education is a public issue. So there are a lot of people with an opinion around career education and guidance that we need to engage with. And lastly, the discussion point of careers leadership. Career education and guidance has evolved. We've evolved from a need to lead. We started out as a very small entity in schools, and we have just grown from providing career education to across the school, from the consideration of someone to teach career education, from career guidance over a life course, not just one point in time. So we've evolved, and we've evolved from a need to lead, and we are leading. We are currently leading careers. I think that's something that is part of our whakapapa, part of our DNA. It doesn't mean though that we know everything about leadership, but it was part of how how we made our way in that big juggernaut called the education sector and education space. I think I've reiterated this before. What models of career leadership exist in other sectors? Let's find out. How do we innovate within models? And are we fitting in rather than standing out? I love this. And it's an article, and I can't, hopefully somebody can remember who wrote this article. I want to think it was Bright and Pryor, I'm not sure, but I just love the title. Are we fitting in rather than standing out? And I wonder a lot about that. Are we trying to fit in, fit around? But, is it time now to stand out? And I think the time is right for that, because we've got the National Career System Strategy as a standout, which is completely focused on the career space. Do we need to be clear, concise? And I guess I'm thinking here about the sense making. Trust ourselves, back ourselves, so to speak, because we are already leading and we are already leaders. That's something that came out really strongly in this research. Oh, I just need to step down off that soapbox now. Okay, so here were my recommendations, and they're in much more detail because there's a lot to these in the report. So I had 3 recommendations. Lead in leadership beyond the school gate. Our field, career education and guidance, we serve all within the school gates and beyond, and over a life course. So, school is one part of the journey, but not the only journey, only point through the journey. And so I think that's something that we need to consider. Allies and partners who support growing social value solutions. And I'm talking here as my current role in EPIT, and the community groups, the partners, the funders, so many people doing some amazing stuff within that social value space. It's worthwhile us doing more, engaging more, building partnerships, allies with people, with new people who have a different view of the world. And I think there's a lot we can learn and a lot of changes we can make in career education and guidance. The second one was the craft of sense making. It is a craft, supporting people to make sense, which is what we do in careers, supporting people to make sense of things, of careers, of life, of work, of jobs. It's a craft. And I think if we can advance sense making using different techniques to do that, so that it's not always just a sort of a let's meet each other and talk about what we do in our jobs, but some kind of structured dialogue that goes on, so that we, those of us who work in schools, can have a framework to share with their teaching colleagues in relation to sense making about career education and guidance. And there's more research we could do around this. I think there's PLD, there's creating projects, initiatives in your schools around this. That would be amazing. So advanced sense making using structured dialogue or story gathering with teachers. The story gathering is part of our role. We do it all the time, trying to listen for a story and so on. So we're story gatherers by nature, by design. So using some of what our field has as at our core to perhaps advance sense making sense of career education and guidance for people who aren't from that or aren't a part of that field, or the field that we understand it to be. They might be in other sectors and other areas. And the last one was careers leadership. And This one was also about profiling career education and roles. And I'm sure this has been said before. I'm sure I'm not the first one to say it. Researchers, tells us this time and time again, we're not the first to have gone there. But perhaps establishing a basic level of career knowledge required for non-career staff in schools, just so we've got somewhere, a baseline. And of course, under careers leadership was that every school to have a current career education and guidance strategy. I know career education and guidance plans, I know they've been around for a long time. And I know there's different ways of creating these and evidencing them and so on. But I wonder if we could initiate something that said every school to have a current career education and guidance strategy and or plan, and put that towards our senior leadership team. And I know many of the respondents already have these in place, and they're aligned with the school strategy as well. So I might be speaking to the converted, but it was one of the recommendations that I made. And I think that's kind of getting close to the end now, whānau. And just some last insights from me. Career knowledge is being expressed, great. Research continues to confirm and reaffirm, like it does, but and this was is an issue for me that the research is, I've been here that long that I'm still hearing some of the same issues coming up. What are we going to do about that? What can we do about that? National Career System Strategy, there's some movements there. School careers strategy plans in schools. Let's start the kōrero around that. Sense making. So I think there's things there that we can look into. That's for sure. Look towards innovative spaces in other sectors. Yeah, I'm all for that. I'm all for that. Look within Aotearoa. That's a big one for me. What career knowledge and models are we evolving? What models are born out of Aotearoa that can serve us? Wayfinding is just one example. And then just this this is, I think, the last couple of paragraphs in the report, where I think, that's good. That's good. While non-career staff may think they already do or teach career education, the reality is that they have not yet recognised and learned new behaviours of another field, our field. Without this commitment, career education will continue to be tolerated but not respected as part of the curricula and as a requirement of government learning priorities. I like that. I like that end statement. So that's the end of my presentation, but I just have one final announcement to make here. So Springboard Trust are a partner, they're one of the residents here in the EPIT, in our EPIT space in Onehunga. They are developing a careers leadership development program. So they're developing and delivering a new program to improve strategic leadership and career and transition programs in secondary schools. So works really nicely with the research. The goal is to enhance post-secondary opportunities for students. So that's happening right now. There's a proof of concept of the program that's been undertaken in 2025, and should that be successful, it will expand beyond into 25 and into 26. Look up Springboard Trust, go to their website. But if you're interested in finding out more about this, because they're doing some mahi on it at the moment, there's a contact point for you. So it's Chris Sullivan, his email, chris@springboardtrust.org.nz, and there is a cell phone number as well. Some of you may have heard about the program, but it's worth getting in touch with him and just seeing where things are at, and if you've got any interest in the program. So that Springboard Trust is one of our delivery partners too here at EPIT. All right, I have left 15 minutes for questions, Nish. What do I do now? Thank you, whānau. Thank you. That was a lot to go through. And I did find myself slowing down towards the end. So hopefully there's something there that you can take away with you. And of course, you can find more detail in the report, which I think Nish is going to be do something with very soon. Nish, can I hand it over to you now so that
Yeah. Um, so thank you, Lynette, for that wonderful presentation of your research and for sharing not just the research itself, but also your thoughts and a bit more depth into what was fed back, because of course not all of it can be included in a report. So that's really great to hear, and also to get your input and perception on that overlaid through your experience, your vast experience in the space. So in the middle leadership defined
wow.
aspect,
Mhm.
so hold how many management units or MAs?
Well, none of the participants put a specific number on the number of units. I wonder if that's the question, or if the question is related to the scenario. And there was no mention about number of units either way.
Okay,
Participants didn't mention it or didn't note it in their responses. But I'll take another look, but I'm sure I would have seen something like that. And it wasn't part of the scenario development either, where they were captured. So I'm sorry about that.
that's right. And another question was how many participants were there? So I've noted 100, there was 114 responses. And what was the split between the different categories?
You mean the different the two participant groups, or
Yeah,
what do you mean the categories?
that's what I believe.
96% of our participants were careers, transition, pathways, and gateway staff in schools. So only a small percentage were from senior leadership teams in schools.
I think one of the other questions that I've got, and that was raised in previous sort of conversations that we've had, is there's a whole bunch of feedback and identification of the role of leadership within careers, school leadership within careers. But then to your point, 96% of the respondents were the careers staff.
Yeah.
So, and there wasn't as much engagement in this with the leadership groups that you'd approach as part of your research.
Yeah.
I'd just love to know more about your thoughts or feedback from any participants, or just generally as part of this research you've come across that touches on this.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was disappointed in that percentage, of course. Who wouldn't be as a researcher? You would hope that there would be, a fairly decent group of from senior leadership team. Great, thank you, Jane. And I mean, one point that is an issue with surveys. Not everyone's going to look for the link or click on the link. They might read it and then not bother to engage with it. So that's one thing. I mean, the comment was, and this was a comment, is common. People are busy. Principals are busy. Senior leadership in schools are all very busy, and under all sorts of pressures and demands by a new government and so on and so forth. So that could be a possibility as well. And on a positive note, a positive thing in relation to the Springboard Trust program is that, and I hope, Chris, you don't mind me sharing just a little bit more. The intention of the program is to bring the senior leadership team or a senior leader person in with a careers person or the careers team engaged in the program together. So, that design was to get that kōrero going, was to work alongside to stimulate sense making of what careers is about and what people do in careers in that more sort of intimate type of setting where it might just be yourself and your team. So that's one way of understanding the perspective of careers leadership from the senior leadership team. But yeah, I don't know, it's just it is something that happens with surveys. I don't have an extensive network myself too, my network is mainly with people like yourselves who are, career practitioners. But I felt like we drew on a lot of organisations, and there was good support for
Yeah.
the survey, that's for sure. But there was always a word of warning. I can't promise you that people will click on the link and so on. So yeah, that's as much as I can say about that, I think.
Kia ora, thank you. We've got another question, or a request rather. So Beth has asked, she'd love to know more about your ideas and thoughts about the connection between career education and curriculum theory.
Email me, Beth. That's a big question. That's a big question. But I'm keen to do more mahi around that.
They've got a question. What surprised you the most?
Oh, about the results, about the survey. What surprised me is the perception of non-career staff in schools. I don't know if that's broader too, about what we do and why we do it, and the strategies that we have, the practices that we keep, the knowledge that we have, theories and models. That surprised me that that's still there, that there's still the question that, will you find people jobs, those sort of descriptions, don't you just hand out brochures? And I heard this in part one too. There was this sticks in my mind, when students just come into the careers centre and say, oh, I'm here to see the careers lady. So that surprised me. A positive surprise is the confidence. The confidence in talking about our careers knowledge, the theories, the models, the practices, the kōrero around models in Aotearoa. That's cool. That to me is very cool. I'm keen on that. We've enough of looking internationally. Let's look at what's homegrown, because it's part of our context. It's drawn from our context. That's why I'm about, let's look at what other models are there for us. We don't have to fit in. We can stand out. Stand up.
Yeah, thank you. And that was a great question, Lynette. Thank you for that. Now, Amanda's asked, is there a plan to engage further on the research and your recommendations?
Oh, yes, that's always the next part of research. I think there's always ways to do that.
Well, we have a date in November.
Pardon?
We have a date in November.
Oh, right. Oh, no, you talk about that. You talk about that. Sure, people are sick of hearing my voice.
No, I bet they're not, and I don't think you've spoken enough. So yes, Amanda, just so that this is for everyone who's in this webinar at the moment, and for everyone that's registered, we are in the process of planning a So What style workshop day in November, and the whole idea is, we've got this research that Lynette has led, that we've had a whole bunch of the ecosystem input into. We've got some learnings, and as a group, how do we now come together and discuss and co-create what might be next steps in this. And the whole idea is, we're potentially looking at making it action focused, so something that's co-created. It's brought together from the community, from you guys, through collaboration and ideation. So that's kind of what we've got planned as the next step. We've got a tentative date of the 14th of November, but again, I'll flick everything through in the email that I sent to everyone that's registered. So thank you for that, Amanda. Now we've got one last question. We do have 5 minutes to go, and I still don't know how much time this might take. So do we have diversity in career roles in schools? And that's from Fiona.
Do we have diversity in careers roles in schools? I think we can always have more diversity fee in our kura, for sure, especially in career roles. Yeah, I think we could always have more. We could always have more. I think there is diversity, but more's better. More's better, and diversity in lots of different ways, right, Fee? Yeah. And I guess that talks to, I wonder if that speaks to, is a careers role something people would want to get into? Is it, we talk about senior leadership roles being appealing, but are our careers roles in schools appealing? I'm not asking that as as to be facetious. I'm just wondering if they are. I see lots of people I don't know in careers. That's always an indicator to me. I'm like, oh, cool. Yeah. Good question, Fee. Good question. Yes, we need more.
Yeah, thank you for that. We've got 4 minutes. Maybe just one more question if something's out there. Otherwise, so I'll leave it open for like 30 seconds, see if any question pops up. If not, then I'll pass the rako back to Lynette to close out the webinar.
Would you like to close for us, Nish?
Yeah, sure. I'm more than happy
To do the karakia when we're in that space. I will just say thank you all so much. I love doing research. I love talking about it, making sense of it, and particularly when it's research that is out of Aotearoa. There are some people are doing some amazing stuff. That is one thing that never ceases to amaze me in our field, that people are being innovative and creative. So thank you, whānau, for giving up an hour and a half of your time. I really, really appreciate it. And please take a look at the report. Nish will stay in touch with you all about our date in November. But in the meantime, keep shining. Keep shining.
Kia ora. Thank you, Lynette. So a huge thank you to you, Lynette, for all your hard work and your mahi in this area. You share your wisdom and your experience freely. You bring a real diverse perspective to it and a wide breadth and depth of knowledge, which is fantastic. So thank you for that. We are privileged to have you working alongside us at the EPA team. Thank you to everyone who came along today, for everyone that registered and helped us share this webinar and the work that Lynette and EPA are doing. Thank you for that. So I will close out with a karakia. Ka whakairia te tapu, kia wātea ai te ara, kia tūriki whakataha ai, kia tūriki whakataha ai. Hui e, tai ki e. Kia ora. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a great day.
Kia pai tō rā.